Oral language provides the foundation for syntax. There are grammatical elements that have to be explicitly taught. Writing reinforces comprehension, and then teachers' analysis of text is really important. So oral language, I mean, this is so important, but fairly obvious and basic that oral language is the foundation because kids come to the written word with syntactic knowledge. They've been taking statistics. Statistical learning for many kids accounts for how well they can process sentences. And the oral language tasks that we can engage kids in the classroom will help develop their ability to produce and understand a variety of sentences. And we do this work orally, especially in kindergarten, first grade, pre-K, because we know this ability supports reading comp and written expression. And all students will benefit from listening to read alouds with complex sentence, because as they listen to those different sentence structures, they're building their syntactic awareness. Just like phonemic awareness, they're building that as they listen to words. They don't know it until we make them consciously aware of that phonemic awareness, that metalinguistic skills. The same thing for syntactic awareness. We're going to make them aware that there are these words inside sentences that if you move them around, it's going to change meaning. Just like if you move a phoneme around, it's going to change the meaning of the word. Oh, I thought this was a funny cartoon because our kids are now so tuned into their devices that they're not reading books as much. So we can't, and audiobooks are good too. So I'm not saying they're not, that you can't, you know, use an audiobook in lieu of a hard-covered book, but I don't know that you can get warm and fuzzy. I love the hearts coming up. Warm and fuzzy with a digital device with a 6-month-old the way you can with a book with beautiful illustrations. So to that point, I want to talk about picture books or book language. There's been interesting work done on book language. I know you know a lot about it. I'm sure you do. But I was really just serendipitously listened to Mary Ellen McDonald, who has worked with Mark Seidenberg, and she's written a lot about book language, and she did a talk for a group that I'm part of, Lunch and Lit, just last Friday. And I loved listening to her talk about the importance of these picture books used in shared book reading with young children, because these books have complex sentences, and these complex sentences are in the books. They're not in child-directed speech. So this is the only way kids are going to learn these sentence structures, right? This shared book reading is a very important source of language experience for children. As it says, because these sentence structures are otherwise rare in child-directed speech, and I'm going to show you examples of this. The work that's being done describes ways in which the language of picture books varies, potential consequences of differences for the observed benefits of reading to young children. And I love her quote, Mary Ellen's quote. She said, "Book language doesn't have shared attention. The reader and writer don't know each other." That's the whole idea. Book language is decontextualized. It has to provide the context because we don't know what the context is otherwise. And so those rich language structures are what provide the context. And this is a more recent article that describes this. There are systematic differences that start early in life and matter, because kids who have been read to, kids who are immersed in this book language, are building their language comprehension skills. And this establishes the foundation for advanced language development, but also for reading. Really important. It establishes the distributional properties that will become inherent in their adult language systems. Can't say enough. And you can read aloud to kids at all ages. I'm sure those of you who teach 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they all like to be read to, right? So it's really important that we continue to do that through the grade levels. In this article that I just referenced here, and it is in your reference, I love this picture that shows the differences between book language and spoken language. And there's lots of differences here. And these are some examples of words that would be considered book language vocabulary. And this is, spoken vocabulary. But what I think is really, in terms of syntax, parts of speech that you see in books, lots of nouns and adjectives versus verbs and pronouns when we're speaking. And in terms of our syntax, as I said, these complex constructions, relative clauses in spoken language, we speak in fragments, right? Or we ask questions. So there's a very big difference in the language of these two systems. I want to give you a couple of examples, but what I mean by that. So this is a beautiful book, Nya's Long Walk, and obviously narrative has a lot of dialogue. But if you read this quickly, you can see where this book language is complex. Even though the sentences aren't long, if you think about the child listening, why would this be complex for them? There's a long way to the water hole. I'll tell mama that you were trouble. So just a quick example, and here's another example from Number the Stars, Lois Lowry's beautiful book. Take a second to read this. A beautiful, beautiful sentence that has so much descriptive language, but you can imagine that this is a difficult sentence would be a difficult sentence for students to comprehend. So one of the take-home messages too in the work that's been done on sentences is that you can't wait to ask questions to the end of whatever it is that the student is reading, a paragraph, a chapter, or whatever, because kids might have confusion right from the get-go. And here's an example from an article that was written a while back. So read this sentence. And the teacher said, "What do you know about Carson now?" And the student said, "They grew up together in the same place." Why did that student answer that way? Because there is a relative clause that described Rachel Carson as a scientist, a writer, and an ecologist. There's a gap between the subject and the predicate with this relative clause, which is extremely common sentence construction. So we have to make sure that kids are comfortable with these different types of sentence constructions. This is an excellent article. It's in your reference. I highly recommend that you read this. There's so much good information in it. So when we're teaching kids about sentences, one of the reasons that we have to do this work and be explicit is we have to clarify ambiguity. And this is how we build syntactic awareness. And I mentioned this a minute ago, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we have to really help students consciously think about, reflect on how words are arranged. And this is a quote from Pinker about understanding the meaning of individual words and how the order conveys thought. I could ask the question, what color was the house to begin with? We have the same 6 words arranged in different order. What color was the house to begin with? In the first sentence, we know it was red. In the second sentence, we don't know what it was. It could have been red, it could have been white, it could have been purple, right? But that one switch of the red, where we put red before and after house, makes a difference. And we can give an example of this too, where we have the blue sky, where sky is a noun, and sky blue, where sky is an adjective. Obviously changes the function of the word where it's placed in terms of the order. So at the heart of our approach to teaching syntax is this idea that we're going to teach kids what is the function of the word, of the phrase, of the clause. Because when they understand that the words and phrases and clauses do function in have different roles, they will understand sentences more thoroughly and more accurately. So we have a kernel sentence with 2 words, and then we have an elaborated sentence with a noun phrase, right? Which birds, what kind of birds? They were birds of all types. They were nocturnal, they were nocturnal birds. And which ones were they? They were the birds of all types. We have our predicate. And when did they fly throughout the night?